Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. Amongst the strongest opponents of the government's land acquisition is the left, and perhaps the most outspoken is CPM Rajya Sabha leader Sitaram Yechury. So how does Mr. Yechury respond to the Prime Minister's powerful Mann Ki Baat appealing to farmers to support the government's land acquisition amendments? And does he fear that the unity the opposition showed last week could dissipate and fritter away when Parliament reconvenes in April? With me to answer those questions is Sitaram Yechury himself. Mr. Yechury, on Sunday in his Mann Ki Baat, the Prime Minister made a powerful and passionate address to farmers to try and convince them that his proposed amendments to the Land Acquisition Act were in their interest and not, as the opposition claims, against their interest. How do you respond to that address?
Among the charges he made against us, he called us as propagating a pack of lies. Now, I would only like to contest this point, that his basis is on spreading of untruths as far as these amendments that they have proposed. In fact, the boot is on the other foot.
What is the untruth you accuse the Prime Minister of spreading? What is the untruth you're accusing him of spreading?
Number one, is it not a fact that the BJP supported this bill in 2013?
Yes, that's part of the past. That's not an untruth he's spreading today. He's not denying it.
Please, 1 minute. Is it a lie to say that the BJP and the Congress got together to defeat the left's amendments in 2013?
But that is all part of the past. That is not something that the Prime Minister is bringing up today. When you say he's lying in Mann Ki Baat, that wasn't part of Mann Ki Baat.
Of course it was. And I'd say, because his entire premise was that we are correcting certain lacunae.
But that's true.
Now, if these lacunae were there, why was the BJP supporting it, and why was it joining Congress in opposing us?
But the Prime Minister accepts that the bill that he supported wasn't perfect. He accepts it has lacuna. He accepts it needs to be corrected. What is better, to accept the mistake and correct it, or to stand by a mistake forever?
Because instead of correctives, he's worsened the bill. I'll tell you why. Number one, that the social impact assessment that contained 5 conditions has been diluted to contain only 1 partially, that too. Number 2, the land that is acquired, if it's not utilized for 5 years or more, that will be returned either to the original owner or to the state land bank.
Let's take these one by one.
That has been gone away with.
Mr. Yechury, let's take these one by one. Let's take them one by one, and I'll begin by those 5 areas where in fact land acquisition has been made easier. The Prime Minister's answer is a very simple one. He says by making it easier to acquire land for purposes such as irrigation, infrastructure, PPP projects and even industry, what the government is doing is facilitating the creation of jobs which will A, provide employment for farmers and their children, and secondly, it will reduce the dependence of whole families on small and diminishing plots. Both of those are manifestly in the interest of farmers.
Mr. Thapa, now you can play the devil's advocate, but the point at issue is, are they to the benefit of the farmer?
Precisely.
Now you have a situation in the country, please listen. Now please listen. You have acquired land for the special economic zones. More than 50% of that is lying unutilized. This is what Mr. Modi's own minister answers to the Rajya Sabha in a written reply last week of the session. Now, if that is the track record, if the protection to the farmer that you acquire land for speculative landed estate activities, in order to protect that, you give the ceiling of 5 years, why is that necessary to remove?
Can I answer that?
How does it make land acquisition easier?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, you please be the devil's advocate and answer.
I'm giving you an answer not as a devil's advocate but as an interlocutor with you, putting the opposite of your viewpoint, which is the right thing to do. Now the answer is this. Let me answer, Mr. Yechury. Let me answer. It is absolutely unfortunate and wrong if land is acquired and not used. But that is not any reason for believing that land that will be acquired for these purposes will not be used. And secondly, these purposes are manifestly going to create jobs. Those jobs will go to farmers and their children. And secondly, they will reduce the dependence of whole families on small diminishing plots. Both of those are in the interest of farmers.
You're only parroting what the Prime Minister said. So stop those arguments, we know that.
But that's because what the Prime Minister said is the reason that many accept.
No, please, Mr. Thapar, the point is, if you acquire land for a project and it doesn't take off in 5 years, then what is the meaning of that? Where is the jobs you are providing? Where is the benefit to the farmers that you are talking of? For 5 years, they have been deprived of their livelihood. Hang on, please.
It's only
listen to my
certain types of projects that will not take off in 5 years and have therefore a greater gestation period. Irrigation comes into that, nuclear facilities come into that, several defense facilities come into it. Many other projects will be completed well within 5 years. So what you're saying applies to a small, minuscule proportion of projects, not all of them. You're exaggerating by making it seem it applies to all.
Why do you remove the social impact assessment? If that is the case, why do you remove the social impact assessment? If it is going to take a long gestation lag, is there some provision to the rights of the farmers and their livelihood? Is there any provision in the amended law that has been brought by Prime Minister Modi, any provision?
Can I answer that?
I challenge you to that.
Can I answer that?
Point out
I'm not giving you Mr. Modi's answer. I'm giving you the answer of an independent person. The social impact assessment as envisaged by the old bill could go on for as much as 52 months. 52 months is enough time to kill off the enterprise entirely. Maybe you should go back to the government and say, let's have an amended social impact assessment that lasts for a shorter time-bound period. You haven't said that as yet.
Fine, you shorten it, but answer one question, Mr. Thapar. If a project does not take off in 5 years, should there not be any provision for the livelihood of the farmer which you have devastated?
Well, you haven't devastated it. You've actually paid him compensation at 4 times the market rate.
Of course you have.
You have paid him compensation at 4 times the market rate.
No, listen to me. You had said the same thing 10 years ago, that in order to carry forward this liberalization process for economic growth, the workers should now agree to become unemployed. So that, please listen. I'm sorry, don't stop interrupting me like this. You can have your point, but you won't listen to the answer. You are saying people should be unemployed today so that economy will grow and the grandchildren will get employment on a future date. But what happens to those you're throwing out today?
Let me put an alternate viewpoint to you. Let me put an alternate viewpoint to you. First of all, why do you not agree to sit with the government, as Mr. Gadkari has suggested, and negotiate a shorter but more relevant social impact assessment time period? You could do that if you wanted to, but you're refusing to. You may have a good point about it, but you need to meet them halfway to implement it.
Again, will you listen to my answer without interruption? When they brought this ordinance, did they discuss with the opposition? Is it not their what you call obligation to take the opposition on board?
They were foolish in not meeting you in advance. But do you want to repay their folly with obstinacy of your own?
I'm sorry.
Do you want to repay their folly with obstinacy of your own?
They did. Of course they did. They did not consult the opposition parties. Even today they are not consulting.
Can I put something
Even today they have not called.
Mr. Yechury,
no,
there
please,
is a
one
bigger,
second.
wider point. I want to get out of the of minutiae and little details. Let me put a bigger point to you. Let me put a bigger point to you. The bigger point is this. Mr.
You started the tutu.
Let me get to the bigger point, because it's not just the minutiae of little details. The bigger point is this. Agriculture is barely 14% of India's GDP, yet it supports well over 60% of the population, and you know better than me, that is unsustainable. You have to create fresh job opportunities so that people who presently depend on agriculture can find other livelihoods. Now, if you don't facilitate industry, how else will you create these jobs?
Do I now have at least half a minute of uninterrupted time? The poser itself is wrong. That without such provisions in land acquisition, you cannot have industry. You can have industry by giving adequate protection to the farmers whose land you are acquiring. You make a provision for 150 kilometers on either side of the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor with Japanese collaboration.
That's changed.
And you tell
it's
me,
now 1 kilometer.
Tell me, even 1 kilometer that you are arguing, you know how much that amounts to? It is close to 32% of all the cultivable land in the country.
Not at 1 kilometer.
That is the amount.
Not at 1 kilometer.
It
would be the case. It would be the case at 150, but not at 1.
No. With 1 kilometer, Mr. Thapa, if you add the national highways, the state highways, and the railway tracks, just these three, that is sufficient to make this 32%.
Can I make a suggestion?
When you had this,
Can I make a suggestion?
Again, you won't allow me to answer.
I'm asking.
You won't allow me to answer. No, you won't allow me to answer. The Yamuna Expressway in UP. You acquired 1 kilometer of land on either side and handed it over to private people involved in landed estate. I don't want to name them, and that's known knowledge. And what is the compensation that the farmers have got?
Can I make a suggestion? You're giving me repeated examples of the same point, which is why I'm interrupting. The suggestion is this. You probably have a good point to make about the need for social impact assessment, and you're accepting that perhaps you would be better off with a shortened one with a dedicated time frame rather than one that goes on for 52 months. You may have a good point about the length and breadth of these industrial corridors, and how they take up land over every highway and every railroad track. Why not sit with the government, as Mr. Gadkari has suggested, and negotiate these? At the moment, that attempt to meet the government even a quarter of the way is not happening. Surely what is needed is for the opposition to also move from obstinacy and stubbornness towards a desire to meet and compromise.
Can I again, you make it, I mean, the same question can be asked in a much shorter time, Mr. Thapa. The question is, for negotiations to take place, for the opposition's point of view to be considered, is the government that has to take the initiative, no?
But hasn't Mr. Gadkari done that?
No, if you say that even the opposition, no. And if you want the opposition itself to take the initiative to say, we want to talk with you, Mr. Government, you please respond. And there's been no response so far. What prevented this Modi government from calling a meeting of all opposition parties on this issue? We've had this n number of times in the past few years. The BJP has been demanding such meetings in the past on different issues. Why is it not being held on this? We are subjected to, no, we are subjected to, 1 minute.
I would readily accept that you are right when you say the government should have taken the initiative and didn't. I will accept when you say that it was for the government to hold meetings before issuing the ordinance rather than seek to do it afterwards. But that is now history. You can't unravel the past. So I put it to you.
No, but
Mr. Gadkari is now suggesting that you sit down. Why not take up that offer?
No, let him call a meeting. Why isn't he not calling a meeting, and instead of going on a one-way traffic that the Prime Minister started, communicating through tweets and one-way radio addresses?
You're saying something very important, Mr. Yechury. I'm just clarifying. You're saying that the government is making public statements that sound like taunts, offering debates and offering talks, but the actual initiative to call a meeting has not been taken. It's only public taunts and statements that you get, not an actual initiative. Have I understood that correctly?
Yes, and send us a letter saying so and so date the government would like to hear our point of view on this ordinance that they brought. I am yet to hear that as the leader of the CPIM in Parliament.
You're saying something again very important. As yet, despite the public taunts and statements by ministers, no letter has come to any opposition leader, certainly not to you as a CPM Rajya Sabha leader, suggesting a meeting, offering dates, and actually saying we want to sit down and sort out our differences. Have I understood you correctly?
Yes, absolutely.
If such a letter were to come, and this is, I know, hypothetical, but if such a letter were to come, because the government is hearing you expose them now, if they were now to send a letter, how would you respond?
Positively. We want the discussion in the House. We want a discussion in the parliamentary committees. We want to put our point of view across. And please listen to me, Mr. Thapa, without interruption for a minute. I've said this in the Rajya Sabha, I said it outside, I'm saying it again. The seat I occupy in the parliament, irrespective of the governments that come and go, that seat remains. From there, I stand up to articulate our position. If necessary, I oppose something which I feel is not in the interest of the people in the country. I will continue to do that. But I'm willing to discuss, and that is what is the point that I'm making.
So you're saying something...
Why are you throwing...
You're saying something very important. I'm just reiterating it. You're saying something very important, which I'm reiterating, that you are willing to sit with the government and make a serious effort behind closed doors to sort out your differences on issues like the amount of land for land corridors, the need and the duration of social impact assessment clauses, so that a sensible, acceptable solution that suits both you and the government can be reached. You're saying that to me, aren't you?
Yes, and there are some more points I would like to discuss. The original bill provided for protection to not only owners of the land, but also to a large section of people who are agricultural labor, plus a large section of the rural population that lives off cultivation.
Okay.
That has been taken away in these amendments.
So you're prepared to discuss a whole gamut of issues that are covered by the land acquisition amendments that the government has in mind? A whole gamut?
Yes, absolutely.
Can I ask you one other question?
Not only behind closed doors. Once again, I'm willing to discuss it even outside, openly, not necessarily behind closed doors.
I think a discussion behind closed doors is more meaningful. A discussion in public just becomes political and polemical. Serious negotiation happens behind closed doors. You're happy to do it behind closed doors.
But I'm only saying I'm happy to do it both ways.
Okay. Now, one other question. You're speaking today as the Rajya Sabha leader of the CPM and as one of the most senior Politburo members of the CPM. But does your willingness to meet and discuss reflect what the rest of the opposition feels? Do you have any idea where Congress stands?
I think so. I think so, because Congress has on the floor of the House also stated that they want a more proper discussion on this in the Parliamentary Select Committee of the Rajya Sabha. And I'm sure not only the Congress, the other parties will also be willing to bring their concerns on board. The concerns I have just articulated are concerns of the CPIM, but others may have other points of view. Let them all be brought and let them all be discussed.
And the important thing you're saying is that you believe that Congress shares your willingness to meet behind closed doors, sit down, discuss, and try and reach a compromise on all these issues. You believe Congress shares that position?
I'm not giving you a guarantee, but I think they should, and I'm sure they would, going by what they said in the Parliament.
One last question, Mr. Yechury, before we run out of time.
Yeah.
Last week, when 14 parties marched together to Rashtrapati Bhavan, there was admirable unity and people thought that, in fact, the government was being pushed to the wall. 24 hours later, parties like the Trinamool Congress, the Biju Janata Dal and the AIADMK voted with the government over the Coal and Mines Bill. The JDU strategically walked out, which helped the government as well. Are you worried that when it comes to April, May, and the land acquisition has to be voted on, whether you've had that private meeting behind closed doors or not, the same peeling away of support could happen and the government could emerge victorious?
You see, it is perfectly possible, and the BJP is no less, in fact, is more efficient in coming to deals with certain parties and also misleading them that the state governments will gain because of these amendments or the changes. I think they are also being misled, or some deals are being done. That's perfectly possible. But remember, such things have happened in the past. But we stand committed to the interests of the Indian farmer and to the interests of the Indian people.
But you said an important thing, that it's possible that some of the other parties could be won away. Deals, as you said, could be done. Deals that would be trade-offs, political trade-offs, that would therefore strengthen the BJP at the cost of opposition unity. A quick yes or no?
Yes, that is possible. We've seen it happen in the past. We've seen the Congress do that. We've seen the BJP do that.
All right, Mr.
I only hope that in the interest of the Indian farmer, our annadatas, so to speak, such a thing does not happen.
All right, Mr. Yechury, we're going to have to leave it there. We began
Yes,
somewhat fractiously, but we've ended much more harmoniously, and also we've ended with a very fair measure of, I think, confirmation from you that you are prepared to sit with the government behind closed doors and discuss, provided the government takes the initiative, and let's hope the government is listening and actually does take that initiative. My thanks to you, Mr. Yechury, and there we end this particular episode. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night.